only the climate would change quickly, maybe within a few years, even a year, perhaps a month. How about next week? You see, the problem with getting folks to understand climate change is that our lives are subject to a world where instant is the expectation, where disposable is part of our culture, where want means now, and where planning by government seems to follow the same pattern. The reality is that climate has not changed like this, and is not changing in this manner. If I want to experience a quick change in climate, then I need to hop onto a jet and fly 1,000 miles or more to the south, where I can leave the rains of England and bask under the sunny skies of a beach in the Canary Islands or Tunisia. We seem to be stuck in a ditch, where we cannot seem to look over the top and see what is really happening around us. If it rains, if it snows, if the sun shines brightly for a few days, and there are times when it does so, even in England, then we are told this is weather. So where does weather end, and where does climate begin? The answer from science is that climate is the long-term average of weather. So weather can be variable. If we get a storm, then this is weather, and we do not expect a storm every day. However, the reports from various groups, including the IPCC, make an important point about climate change. We can expect an increase in frequency, intensity, and duration of events. Further examination of reports reveals a few simple ideas about the area where I live. We can expect an increase in precipitation in higher northern latitudes, and we can expect to be exposed to a greater risk of flooding. So, have the events in England changed minds? This winter has seen weather patterns that might be interpreted as expected under conditions of climate change. The problem is that officials, from government or even from the weather centres, will respond with the oft-repeated story that rain is weather, a one-off. We cannot be certain that any of this is due to climate change. Wait a minute. If this is so, then we should look at the frequency of these weather events, and we should be looking beyond our own shores. For the pattern of extreme events over the last 15 years shows exactly what the reports have suggested. In 2012, we were told in the UK that the year was the wettest since around 1776. In 2000, we had one of the wettest years on record, and now this year could be even wetter. So, 3 of the wettest years since over 240 years ago. We have an increase in droughts in part of the world, an increase in the severity of storms in some areas, and we most certainly have an increase in flooding due to storms in England. For this year's events have become something that we can expect. The former Three Sigma event, expected only once in 100 years or so, has occurred at least 3 times in 15 years. This may be the new normal. It is a part of climate change, and it is happening faster than many predicted. It is not extraordinary weather. It is the weather we can expect more often. Why should we be worried in the UK? It's estimated that 1 in 6 homes are at risk from flooding, which means over 4 million homes. A response from a government official, that homeowners knew the risk when they bought their homes, fails to address the questions. Given our knowledge of climate change, why are we not doing enough to protect these homes? And why are we still building homes on unprotected floodplains? What will be the loss for farmers in terms of food production? How will we make up for food shortages? Many folks are willing to accept that climate change has a lot to do with emissions of carbon dioxide, and that these are largely a result of our own activities and our patterns of life since the Industrial Revolution. Lives have changed, and many changes have been beneficial. Whether we talk about energy in the home, the use of the gadgets that we have that make life easier. We could talk about the energy that drove the Industrial Revolution, energy that came from coal, not used simply for heating our homes, but to drive steam engines that in turn powered the looms of factories the potteries, and a complete rail transport system. Life has actually not changed a great deal when we consider energy. We still get energy from coal and gas that emit carbon dioxide and are burned in great quantities, and the energy is then distributed to factories and homes along power lines. How do we set about reducing emissions, and how do we reduce these fast enough to prevent the 4-degree world that is predicted for the coming century? Well, the answer is that what threatens us can also be something that might save us. England is situated in a position where we get abundant wind, and in many places a good deal of water, and where tidal ranges are great. All of these can be harnessed in a way that allows us to use the energy to replace those sources that emit carbon dioxide. Wind turbines have been used on a small scale on farms for years, and they still are. A turbine producing a few kilowatts can produce enough electricity to power lighting and even heating. On the hill farms in England, there is rarely a shortage of wind. We can also put groups of turbines together to create wind farms. The earliest in this area was installed in 1992, and it's still running well. Much of the UK has wind with speeds of 6 metres a second or more for long periods, and that's sufficient to drive very large turbines. The British Hydropower Association estimate that there is potential to increase electricity capacity from water by 2 gigawatts. Now, how much of this can be realised is not really known, and here we have to consider the time taken to build dams and the opposition to these schemes. However, hydropower is not always about constructing large dams, and there are numerous opportunities for smaller scale projects, some incorporating screw turbines, which are driven by diverting a small amount of a flow from a stream or a river. And once finished, there's very little visual impact. Now, compared to many countries, we have enormous potential for tidal power, yet we lag behind France, where tidal power has been used since 1966, and South Korea, already a 250 megawatt generating capacity. The Pentland Firth has an estimated potential to generate 8 terawatts. Yet only now are we beginning to see a very small investment. In contrast to the potential available for renewable energy, we are seeing tax breaks for fracking natural gas, with incentives offered to councils to shortcut and steamroller planning applications for drilling. Cheap energy today, regardless of the long-term consequences. That serves to underline the need for getting the climate message across now. There are clear messages if we are willing to read reports on climate change and to observe what is happening around us. Climate change is real. It is gradual, but we can see how extreme events are going to affect us. And we can expect those events to occur far more frequently. We know enough about emissions that are the cause of climate change, and we are in position to do something about these emissions. We can change our way of life. We can move away from the addiction to fossil fuels. With renewable energy, there is a great opportunity to leave a cleaner and a more secure future for our children and grandchildren. Thank you.